My name is Holly Crawford. I am 25 years old. At 2:14 in the morning, my appendix ruptured. The pain was so violent that I collapsed on the bathroom floor of my apartment. I called my mother 17 times. At 3:41, she finally responded. Not with a call, with a text. Holly, stop being so dramatic. Your sister's baby shower is tomorrow. We cannot leave now. Take some Tylenol and stop ruining Brit's big day just because you want attention. I barely made it to the hospital. On the operating table, my heart stopped for 43 seconds. When I woke up 3 days later, the doctors told me they had placed me in a medically induced coma to protect my brain after cardiac arrest. Then I learned something even stranger. My entire $89,000 hospital bill had already been paid in full by a man I had never met. My mother did not come to the hospital to see whether I was alive. She came to pressure me into asking the doctors to discharge me early. What she did not know was that the man who paid my bill had been quietly watching over my family for 20 years. And what she definitely did not know was that everything she had hidden for 2 decades was about to come crashing into the light. If you are listening right now, and this story already feels a little too familiar, then stay with me. And if you have ever been the one in your family who was called dramatic whenever you were hurting, then this story is for you. Now let me take you back to the beginning. I am a firefighter paramedic with the Austin Fire Department. I have been working emergency calls for 5 years. I have transported dozens of appendicitis patients. I know the signs. I know what rebound tenderness feels like. I know where McBurney's point is. I know the difference between discomfort and disaster. So when I woke up at 2:14 on February 8 with a pain like a hot blade in my lower right abdomen, I knew exactly what it was. I still tried to talk myself out of it. Maybe it was food poisoning. Maybe it was a muscle cramp. Maybe it would pass. It did not pass. By 2:25, I could not stand up straight. By 2:30, the nausea hit. By 2:35, I was on the bathroom floor with my phone in my hand, calling my mother. My Austin Fire Department uniform was hanging on the bedroom door. I would be back on shift in 2 days. But in that moment, I was not a paramedic. I was not trained. I was not calm. I was just a daughter who wanted her mother. The first call went to voicemail. I waited and called again. Voicemail. Then again, voicemail. I called my stepfather, Roger. Voicemail, back to my mother. Voicemail. The pain kept climbing. I am trained to stay calm when people are bleeding. I am trained to make decisions under pressure. But when you are the one on the floor and you can feel your own body failing inside you, then training only takes you so far. I kept calling. At 2:56, I left a message. Mom, please pick up. This is not a stomach ache. Something is really wrong. At 3:22, I left another one. Mom, I am not being dramatic. I need help. I am scared. At 3:38, I could not form full sentences anymore. I just cried into the voicemail and hung up. 17 calls, no answer. Then at 3:41, my phone buzzed. I thought she was finally calling me back. She was not. It was the text about Brit's baby shower, the one telling me to take Tylenol and stop seeking attention. I read it 3 times because I could not believe my own mother had written those words while I was curled up on the floor trying not to black out. Then another wave of pain tore through me. Harder. Deeper, different. Something inside me gave way. I knew in that instant that the rupture had gone from dangerous to catastrophic. I had seen this progression before in patients. Once the infection spills and sepsis starts moving fast, the clock becomes brutal. I had maybe a short window before things became critical. I grabbed my keys off the nightstand and dropped them. Picked them up and dropped them again. My hands were shaking so hard they barely worked. I thought about calling one of my coworkers. Jake lived 20 minutes away. He would have come. I know he would have come. But making that call meant admitting that my own family would not help me. I thought about calling an ambulance. But if I did that, then my crew would know that I was alone at 3 in the morning, while my family chose a party over me. So I did the dumbest thing a trained medical professional can do. I decided to drive myself 12 minutes to St. David's Medical Center. I told myself I could survive 12 minutes. I made it to my car, started the engine, pulled out of the complex at 3:50. Austin was almost empty at that hour. Every red light felt eternal. At one intersection, I had to pull over and throw up on the pavement. Then I got back in and kept driving. I talked myself through every block. Do not pass out. Stay awake, breathe, keep going, just make it to the ER. At 4:02, I pulled into the emergency bay. I put the car in park. Opened the door. Tried to stand. My legs collapsed under me. I hit the pavement. The last thing I remember was someone shouting for a gurney. Then everything went black. I woke for a moment while they rushed me through the ER doors. Bright lights above me, faces blurred together, voices overlapping, blood pressure 89/52, heart rate 121. Temperature 102.1. Get Dr. Akafer now. Then I saw a familiar face, Nurse Amy. We had trained together before. Holly, can you hear me? Ruptured appendix, I whispered. I am septic. I know, honey, we have you. She asked for my emergency contact. I gave her my mother's number. 90 seconds later, she came back. No answer. I gave her Roger's number. No answer there either. Then she looked at me and asked if there was anyone else at all, and I said the hardest thing I had ever said out loud. No, there is no one else. Something in her face changed then. Not judgment, not shock, just sorrow. She squeezed my hand and said, we have you. You are not alone. But I felt alone, completely and absolutely alone. Then Dr. Akafer appeared. He was a trauma surgeon I already knew from department training. His expression told me everything before he even opened his mouth. Holly, we are taking you to surgery right now. Your appendix has ruptured. You are septic. We cannot wait. I tried to nod. The ceiling started spinning. Then the world went white. Later, they told me what happened in the operating room. The surgery began at 4:38 in the morning. They opened me up and found a fully ruptured appendix with widespread contamination and peritonitis already setting in. They moved fast. They removed the appendix. They cleaned the infection. They flushed my abdomen. Then at 6:27, everything went wrong. My heart dropped into ventricular fibrillation. The monitor started screaming. Defibrillator, compressions, epinephrine, more compressions. For 43 seconds I had no heartbeat, 43 seconds. Then the shock brought me back. Dr. Akafer later documented that it was one of the closest calls he had seen in months. He also documented something else. My family had been called again and again during the crisis. Still no answer. After surgery, they transferred me to the ICU and made a decision to put me into a medically induced coma. It is standard after cardiac arrest when there is concern about oxygen loss to the brain. Sedation can reduce the damage and give the body a chance to stabilize. So for 3 days, machines breathed for me and medication kept me unconscious while my body fought to survive. Hospital staff kept trying my mother, then Roger, then both again, still nothing. One note in my chart said that after more than 24 failed contact attempts, the staff had notified social services because the complete lack of family response was deeply concerning. While I was unconscious in intensive care, my sister's baby shower went ahead exactly as planned. Cake, gifts, photos, smiles. My mother was available for all of that, just not for me. 3 days later, they stopped the sedation, and I began to rise back to the surface. The first face I saw when I opened my eyes was Nurse Jennifer. She leaned close with tears in her eyes and said, "Welcome back, honey. You scared us." My throat was shredded from the breathing tube. She gave me water in tiny sips and explained where I was. I asked how long I had been out. 3 days. I asked about my mom. Jennifer hesitated. Then she sat down beside me and took my hand. "Sweetheart, we called your family over and over. We left messages. No one came. That hurt more than the surgery. That hurt more than the cardiac arrest. She chose the party. She chose the shower. She chose everything except me." Jennifer stayed with me that morning for nearly 2 hours. She explained what had happened. She told me what recovery would look like. She made sure I knew I was safe. She was kind in the exact way my own mother should have been. Around noon, visiting hours began. Jennifer smiled softly and said maybe your family will come now that you are awake. I knew better. 6 hours later, I was proven right. At 3:45 that afternoon, someone finally came into my room, but it was not my mother, not Roger, not Britt. It was a billing clerk. Her name was Rita, and she looked uncomfortable walking into the room of a woman who had just woken up from a coma. She told me she needed to update me on my account. I braced for the damage. Emergency surgery, ICU, cardiac arrest, specialists, drugs, monitoring. Even with insurance, I assumed I was looking at a crushing bill. I asked how bad it was. She smiled. Actually, your balance is 0. I thought I had misheard her. She explained that my insurance had not even been billed yet because a private party had already paid the entire amount in full. $89,000. Cashier's check, cleared that morning. I asked who did it. She checked the file and read the name, Vincent Murphy. The memo line said for Holly Crawford, a promise kept. I had never heard that name before in my life. Rita handed me the receipt, every charge listed, every dollar accounted for. At the bottom it said paid in full. A stranger had done what my own family would not. After she left, I stared at that receipt for a long time. Then I texted my mother, Mom, I am awake. I was in a coma for 3 days. My heart stopped during surgery. I almost died. Please come, I need you. She read it within minutes. No reply. I texted Britt. Britt, I am in ICU at St. David S. Can you come see me? Read, no reply. Finally, my mother called. I answered so fast I almost dropped my phone. Her voice was irritated from the first word. She said the hospital had been calling and the timing had been inconvenient. Inconvenient? I told her I had almost died. She told me I was obviously fine now because I was awake and talking. Then, without asking how I felt or whether I needed anything, she said she needed a favor. She wanted me to ask my doctor for an early discharge. I thought I had misunderstood her. She repeated it. Said hospitals keep people too long. Said I would recover better at home. Said I had been there long enough. I told her the doctors wanted me there several more days. She told me doctors always say that. Then she hung up. Those were my mother's first real words to me after my heart stopped. Not are you okay, not I am sorry, not I love you. Asked to be discharged early. She came that afternoon. She did not hug me. She did not even walk all the way to the bed. She stood near the doorway holding her purse and scanning the room like she was worried someone else might be there. I asked why she had ignored my calls. She said the baby shower was important and there had been so much to prepare. I asked if it had been more important than my life. She told me not to be dramatic. That was when Dr. Acaffer walked in for rounds. My mother immediately tried to push the discharge question on him. His expression turned cold and clinical. He said my condition was medically unstable. He reminded her that I had suffered cardiac arrest. He reminded her that I was still on IV antibiotics for sepsis. He told her discharge was not even remotely appropriate. She argued about cost. He shut that down too. Then he asked me directly if I wanted to leave against medical advice. I looked at my mother. At the woman who had ignored 17 calls while I was dying and then showed up to get me out of the hospital before I was safe. I said no, absolutely not. Dr. Acaffer nodded and left. My mother stood there breathing hard through her nose. Then she turned and walked out without saying goodbye. But something happened in the hallway. She stopped dead. A man was standing there. Tall. Gray hair, military posture. I could not hear what he said to her, but I saw her face drain of color. She looked terrified. Then she hurried to the elevator like she was escaping a fire. A few minutes later, Jennifer came back in and quietly asked me if everything was okay between me and my mom. I could not answer. Jennifer sat beside me and said that in 15 years of nursing, she had never seen a parent ignore that many emergency calls and then arrive only to pressure their child into leaving the hospital. Early. That night I lay awake thinking about one thing, the name Vincent Murphy. The moment I had said it earlier, my mother had gone pale. She knew who he was. The next morning I got my answer. Jennifer knocked softly and told me I had a visitor. His name was Vincent Murphy. I said yes. The man from the hallway stepped into my room. He looked to be in his late 50s or early 60s. Gray hair cut short, upright bearing, calm face, kind eyes, a man who had seen hard things and learned how to carry them without making noise. He introduced himself as Captain Vince Murphy, retired United States Army. Then he said the sentence that changed my life. I served with your father, Michael Crawford. My father died when I was 5. I had only fragments left of him. A bedtime story, a pair of hands tying my shoe, the scent of aftershave, that was all. So when Vince said he had known my father, it felt like someone had opened a locked room inside me. He told me that in May of 2006 in Fallujah, Iraq, their patrol had been hit by an IED. My father shielded Vince from the blast and saved his life. Then Vince told me why he had paid my bill. Because 20 years ago your father made me promise that if anything happened to him, I would watch over you. I could barely breathe. Vince told me my father had been conscious for a short time after the explosion, long enough to talk, not about the mission, not about the war, about me and Britt. He said Holly is brave. Holly wants to help people. Holly is going to need someone. Then he made Vince promise to watch over me, and then my father said something else. Do not let Karen erase me. Do not let them forget. Karen, my mother. Vince took a worn photograph from his jacket and handed it to me, my father in uniform holding me as a baby. Looking at me with a kind of love so open and absolute it hit me like grief all over again. I asked if I could keep it. Vince said it had always been mine. Then he told me the part that made the room spin. He had tried to stay in touch after the funeral. My mother shut him out, changed numbers, moved, cut contact, refused to let him into our lives. So he watched from a distance. He checked public records, followed just enough to make sure I was okay, and for 20 years he had been sending money through a lawyer. A total of $64,000. I told him I had never seen any of it. He said he knew, because my mother had kept that too. Then he placed a folder on the table and asked if I knew what SGLI was. Service Members Group Life Insurance. I did. He told me my father had a $400,000 policy when he died. $200,000 went to my mother. $100,000 was left to Britt. $100,000 was left to me. But Britt and I were not supposed to receive our shares until we turned 25. I had turned 25 just weeks earlier. No one had told me anything. Then Vince asked me when Britt had turned 25, 4 years earlier. He asked what happened soon after. She had a massive wedding. Then she and her husband bought a house near Lake Travis. My mother always said they had saved carefully, that they had planned well, that Britt was responsible. Vince calmly laid out document after document, venue invoice, property closing records, gift documentation, trust paperwork. Then he showed me the key form. It was the trust disbursement release from February 2022. Both daughters' signatures were required. Britt's signature was real. Mine was forged. I stared at it. It was not my handwriting, not even close. I said I never signed that. Vince said I know. That was the moment the truth landed. My mother had forged my signature and stolen my $100,000. Then she had used it to help fund Britt's life. The wedding, the house, a car, other gifts, other support. Vince showed me old messages I had sent my mother over the years asking for modest help during emergencies. Money for my cat's surgery, help with a car loan, small things, real things. Each time she had refused me and told me to be more responsible. All while sitting on money my father had died to leave me. I asked Vince how much he knew. He said everything, and he had the proof. I asked what I was supposed to do now. He said we were going to confront her, not in private where she could deny or twist or gaslight, in front of witnesses. He told me Britt was hosting a family dinner in early March to introduce the baby. People would be there. Roger's military friends too, enough witnesses that the truth could not be buried. I said it would destroy the family. Vince looked at me gently and said they had already done that. I would only be refusing to carry their lie any longer, so I agreed. I was discharged a few days later once Dr. Acaffer was satisfied that I was genuinely stable. No shortcuts, no pressure, no compromise. Over the next 2 weeks, Vince helped me prepare. He had already spoken with attorneys. The civil case was solid. The criminal exposure was worse. Forgery, identity theft, fraud. He suggested trying settlement first. Faster, cleaner. Less traumatic unless they forced it further. Then he did something else for me. He connected me with men from my father's old unit. For years they had wanted to know me, but my mother had blocked that too. I met them over dinner. Carlos, Deshawn, others, they showed me pictures, told me stories. Spoke about my father like a living person instead of a blurred memory. They told me he was funny, that he loved awful puns, that he talked about me constantly, that he called me his little firefighter. I cried in the middle of the restaurant. For the first time in my life, I felt like my father had come back to me. Then March arrived, Britt's house. Lake Travis, meet baby Henry dinner. Vince drove me there. The house was beautiful, large, expensive, partly built with my money. Britt opened the door smiling and led me to the baby. He was tiny and peaceful and innocent. I told her he was beautiful. Then she apologized for not coming to the hospital and said Mom told me you had the flu and did not want visitors. I stopped cold. The flu, that was the story my mother had told, not emergency surgery, not sepsis, not cardiac arrest. The flu, then my mother appeared. She saw Vince and turned pale. We all sat down. Connor's parents were there. Friends were there. Roger's military buddies were there. Perfect. Dinner started. Toasts were made. Smiles passed around the table. Then I stood up. I said I wanted to make a toast too. To my father, Michael Crawford. A man who died serving his country and providing for his daughters. A man whose sacrifice some people in this room have spent 20 years erasing and exploiting. The room went still. Then Vince stood and identified himself. Some of Roger's military friends recognized the name immediately. Their attention sharpened. Vince laid the first document on the table, my father's SGLI policy, then the trust disbursement form. Then the forged signature. Connor looked at it and immediately said the signatures did not match. I said because I never signed it. Colonel Davies, one of Roger's friends, looked at my mother and said this was not a family misunderstanding. This was serious fraud. Then came the wedding invoice, the house records, the money trail. Britt started crying. She said she did not know, and I believed her. My mother tried every excuse she could think of. She said she had used the money for the family. She said it was all meant to support everyone. She said if I had asked, she would have explained. I asked how I could have asked about an inheritance I was never told existed. She had no answer for that. Then she tried her last move. She said my father would have wanted the money used for the whole family. That was when Vince's voice turned cold. He said, "Do not speak for Michael. I was there when he died. I heard what he said. He told me to protect Holly. He did not tell me to let Karen steal from her." Then Colonel Davies turned to Roger and asked if he knew. Roger hesitated. Then he admitted it. Yes, he had known. He said Karen told him when they got married, and he had thought of it as family resources. Colonel Davies looked disgusted. He said it was dishonor. Then he stood up and walked out. But I was not finished. I told everyone in that room what happened the night my appendix ruptured. I told them I called my mother 17 times while I lay on the bathroom floor. I told them what her text said. I showed them the screenshot. I told them I drove myself to the hospital while septic. I told them my heart stopped. I told them I was in a coma for 3 days. Vince added that the hospital had tried to reach my mother 28 times during that crisis. Never answered. Never came. Connor's mother looked at my mother with horror. She asked if she had really let her daughter drive herself to the hospital with a ruptured appendix because of a baby shower. My mother started trying to justify it. Connor's mother cut her off and said there is no event on earth more important than your child dying. Britt was sobbing by then. Baby Henry started crying too from the tension in the room. Then I said the only thing left to say. I want the full amount my father left me, in writing, within 90 days. If I do not get it, I will file criminal charges and sue civilly for everything available to me. Vince added that attorneys had already reviewed the evidence and that witnesses were sitting at that table. My mother begged to handle it privately because family does not sue family. I looked her in the eyes and told her she stopped being my mother the night she chose a party over my life. Then Vince and I left. We did not look back. By Monday, my attorney had sent a formal demand letter. By Thursday, my mother and Roger had hired counsel. At first, their lawyer tried to call it a family dispute. Then my attorney sent the fraud analysis. The tone changed immediately. Before the end of the month, we had a settlement, $200,000. $100,000 paid immediately through a home equity line. The remaining $100,000 paid over 18 months. I agreed not to pursue criminal charges as long as every payment arrived on time. Miss one payment, and that protection would vanish. When the first $100,000 hit my account, I sat in my truck in the bank parking lot and cried for an hour. Not because I wanted money, because for the first time in my life the truth had won. I used the money carefully: emergency fund, student loans, house down payment fund, investments, and $20,000 went to the Wounded Warrior Project in my father's name. At the memorial presentation, I stood beside Vince and several of my father's old unit brothers while a plaque bearing my father's name was unveiled. Proof that he existed. Proof that he mattered. Proof that he had not been erased. That evening Britt texted me. She said she was sorry, that she truly had not known. That she would make sure Henry knew about Michael Crawford and what kind of man he was. I did not forgive her, not then, but I did answer. I told her to break the cycle. That was what mattered now. In the weeks that followed, Vince became family in the truest sense of the word. We had dinner often. He told me real stories about my dad, the small human details no one else had ever given me. The bad jokes, the fear of spiders he never admitted, the way he cried at movies, the way he loved me. Then one night Vince gave me a small box. Inside were my father's dog tags. I put them on and felt the weight settle against my chest. It felt like being anchored. Later on Father's Day, Vince and I visited my father's grave. We brought flowers and a flask of bourbon because apparently that had been his favorite. Before we left, Vince handed me another envelope. It was a letter my father had written for me before deploying. A letter meant to be given to me when I turned 25. Inside, he had written that I was his heart, that I should never let anyone make me feel small, that I should be brave and kind and exactly who I wanted to be. I keep that letter in my wallet now. Not long after that, I applied for advanced rescue training through the department. High angle. Confined space. Swift water. When my captain asked me why I wanted it, I told him the truth. I want to be the person who shows up when someone calls 17 times and nobody else answers. He approved it on the spot, so this is where I am now. I am Holly Crawford. I am a firefighter and a paramedic. I am Michael Crawford's daughter. I was abandoned. I was lied to. I was stolen from. I was left alone when I needed my family most. But I survived. I fought back. I told the truth, and I built something of my own. If you have ever been the scapegoat in your family, then hear me clearly. Your memory matters. Your pain is real. You are not selfish for protecting yourself. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. And you are not required to accept abuse just because it comes from people who share your blood. Sometimes the family you choose will save your life more honestly than the family you were born into. That is my story, and for the first time in my life it belongs to me. If Holly's story touched you in any way, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear that surviving betrayal does not make you broken, and choosing yourself does not make you selfish. And if you have ever been treated like the scapegoat in your family, comment, "I chose myself," so others reading this know they are not alone.